Hey folks, we are back to the Tampa Florida Living channel. I've got Phil Gilchrist, one of the agents on my team, joining us today. We're jumping into, is moving to Tampa, Florida right for you? I think that's a fun topic, very broad. I'm leaving it general. So any of you folks, if you're watching, by all means, drop some questions in the comments and we'll be happy to answer. But, there's a ton of topics to talk about when we're talking about is moving here right for me. And kind of came up with this title because we take phone calls from families all around the country that are looking to move here. And they always have different questions, like what's the crime like? What's the cost of living like? What's the, the weather? And talk to me about the animals and the bugs. I mean, there's a million different topics that we hear. So I think we'll definitely jump into some of those and start to answer that. But again, folks, anybody watching, let us know where you're coming from. That's always fun to know. And drop those questions in the comments because we'd love to answer them live here for you. Phil, good to have you back, buddy. I know you were out of town for a little bit.
I missed you guys here.
Yeah, give me one big one, man. What are you seeing with people that all the families were helping move here? What's a big one that you just see people moving, something that brings up, they're like, hey, I'm thinking about Tampa because of this. What pops off?
First thing always comes to mind with me, I'm sick of the cold weather. I want to, get to an area where, I can be in a routine all year long. I need to get healthy again. So we hear so much about Tampa being up and cutting, all the different outdoor activities that you can do here, mainly from your videos. So
Yeah.
I've been doing a great job, bringing a lot of questions and honestly giving us a good overview of what Tampa has to offer. So it's always really.
And you're from Jersey originally. So let's start with you. I'll pick your brain first. You're a perfect example now, man. I know you came down years ago, but how was it coming from a place that does get snow, right? Did you get snow in Jersey? Let me say that.
All the time, all winter.
So coming from a place that gets snow down here, A, how was it? And then B, how did you acclimate? Because that's probably the biggest question people have.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I got introduced to it, at as a phase approach, right? When you're in college, you come down here for the, your 2 semesters, your fall and spring. So it was always nice. I got down here and then I always got to go back, for summer and the winter. So, but, one thing I definitely realized was that, I'm like, hey, I can actually keep my routine and I can continue to do everything that I want to do mostly every single day. I never really had to, always in New Jersey back in that time, early 2000s, you had to plan to start your car. You had to, really wake up an hour early, always constantly watching the weather. When you're out here, I mean, you kind of, you know what to expect. You got to just check for rain. And, but it was just a lot more fluent. I was able to stay in a good routine and always really, for the most part, if I had plans, I can do them.
Yep. No, absolutely. I mean, we might have to, instead of warming up the heater, we might have to warm up the AC sometimes, get that going to cool us off. But outside of that, I hear you. Folks, I know there's a couple of you watching, a couple of you coming on now. If you guys have any questions about moving to Tampa or is it right for you kind of thing, drop them in the comments because we'd love to answer them for you live here. Yeah, when it comes to weather, I mean, I hear a lot of, will I acclimate? How hot is hot? And it's funny because it never reaches 100 degrees here in Tampa. Being positioned right off the Gulf, we get a nice breeze coming through. We're cooler than down south in Miami, and we're actually cooler than Orlando sometimes because Orlando doesn't get that breeze to just keep that temperature, under that 100. So yeah, it gets in the 90s, but that's those months we look for museums and things to do inside. We go to the beach, get in the water, go to a pool kind of thing.
And Adam, also the humidity, right? It's not just the heat, the humidity is the adjustment.
It is. And I'd say that's a big adjustment, but I'll tell you what, man, I was out hiking Grand Canyon and a couple of those places and it was 100 plus with no humidity.
Yeah.
And I know that humidity, you feel kind of sweaty and you really, it's a wet heat. I'll take that wet heat over a dry heat though. I don't know. I felt like my skin was dry. My kid had a nosebleed at one point. It was a different kind of heat. And I'm still like, I'm all right with the wet heat still. I don't know. Maybe I'm just used to it, but
the palm trees always make it a little bit better. You know, you don't get that out over that way.
Yep. No, exactly. Now when somebody moves here though, they're also thinking about, I know cost of living is a big topic right now, affordability, things like that. And, the question is, with this video, I want to always gear it back to this: is it right for you? And the one answer I'll have is I don't know. That's up to you, and it depends on what you're looking for, where you're coming from. A lot of times, just because I say it's affordable doesn't mean it's affordable to one person, but it could absolutely be affordable to another. It really depends on where you're coming from. I was talking to somebody from Hawaii the other day, and they're like, "Man, this is one of the most expensive places." So when I compare it to my situation, I can get a mansion for half the cost that I can in Hawaii. Same thing with some other areas around the country. But you got to remember, we're comparing Tampa, which is now a kind of a major metro. And I think what happens when we talk about the affordability or cost of living here, the biggest thing right now for Tampanians or people that are local, locals here, is that we were used to it being so affordable for so many years and just flying under the radar, that now it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm not used to this. We saw a house that's $250,000 is now $450,000. And so it's just tough to kind of take that. We took it on the chin here, and it happened in just 2 to 3 years time. But I do think that we've now settled in. I feel like everything's kind of settled in. I don't think things are skyrocketing anymore. But again, when I travel, everywhere I've been, I went to California, I went to Texas, I went to Utah, Michigan recently, Chicago. Granted, I know a lot of those places are bigger cities, but little places like Michigan even. We traveled 2.5 weeks all over Michigan, and man, it was expensive too. We were spending $80 for breakfast between my kids and my wife and I. So, on the flip side of that though, it can be affordable. And I know you and I have talked about this in circles when somebody says, "Hey, I have a $350,000 budget or $300,000 budget. What can I get?" And, it's not always the big, shiny, massive house that people want. Some people are like, "Hey, can I get a 2-bedroom close to the beach? I'm kind of simple." You could still find that here, right?
Oh, of course. I mean, honestly, that's one of the greatest advantages, I think, to Tampa. Obviously, being that mid-size, metropolitan city, you do have a lot of towns in the suburbs that still have really easy access to the city within that 30 to 40-minute range. And housing is 20%, less expensive, on that side. There's definitely so many different ways where you can definitely find options in here. And, that's the one thing about Tampa. It's just so connected. I mean, you have places to the north, the south, the east, the west, like, especially now we're seeing even in areas like Parrish, like that's the middle ground to Sarasota and Tampa. You can find affordable housing where you're right in the middle of both cities. So there's definitely still tons of options. Obviously, me and you both know, and I'm sure some of the viewers as well, like South Tampa, right around downtown Tampa. Yes, it's gotten very, very competitive. It's very sought after nowadays, but there's still great locations that are not that much further apart. You just got to be willing to drive. And you know what? Everybody I talk to that is from up north, they're used to driving an hour and a half away to go to work. So for them, when you say, "Hey, you're 30 minutes from the city," they're like, "Huh, that's nothing." Now, I have to admit, I am completely guilty of that. I am so Tampa now. I like having everything 5 to 10 minutes away. But when I was up north, I mean, a half hour, an hour drive, that was nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm from Tampa. There's no chance I'm driving an hour somewhere, but I do find it kind of easy to drive 20 minutes and, and even 30 minutes. But to be fair, when I think about myself, even, because it's not only, hey, is moving to Tampa right for you? It's like sometimes even locals were moving here, and I'm asking myself, do I want to live in the city? Do I want to live in the suburbs? Do I want maybe to be closer to the beach, or maybe a little bit of land, right, to spread out? So what's funny, and hey, El Fresh Sinatra, I'm going to get to those questions in 1 second, but great to have you on here, folks. If you're just jumping on here, because I see a few more of you coming on live, If you have any questions about moving to Tampa, Florida, or even just comments, throw it in the comments. We'd love to chat about it, right? This is live. So yeah, Phil, one of the things is like, I'm a big fixer-upper of homes. I love buying an older home, fixing it up the way I want, but then always having like pristine location. And I was telling somebody this the other day, they're like, oh, High Park is just high end. And no question, it's some of the most costly real estate in all of Tampa because of its location and schools and everything. But man, you can get a one-bedroom condo there in the like probably upper 200s, maybe low 300s, which again, I'm not saying is the cheapest, but find me a major metro that you can get the best location near downtown, walkability in the $2 million, $3 million, $10 million houses in there, and you can find a $300,000 condo. That's crazy. So it depends on what you're looking for, but yes, I feel like that there are some affordable options. It just may not be that perfect turnkey top of the line that you want. Like maybe you got to buy it and put some elbow work, elbow grease in there and make it that house. I mean, this, you've been to my house. I ripped it down to the studs and pretty much built it back up. Right.
Exactly.
To get the house I want. And I've done that 5 times. So,
right. The square foot, you can get, like I said, you can get a good situation with some good square footage. It just might need some makeup,
Yeah. And Tampa's a great place.
And High Park is a little older, like it's a historic area, right? So, I mean, it already has that character already to begin with. So,
Yep. I was going to say Tampa's actually prime for that if you like to fix up homes, because much of the city are older homes, 50s, 70s, things like that. So it's really nice to just be able to get in there and pick of the litter. You could find one that needs a little love, and then you can make it, kind of brand new again. Let's give a little touch on these. This is that El Fresh Sinatra. Hey guys, blessing. Been in Tampa for almost 3 years. If I can, being down family, it'll be 1,000% awesome. Yet it's been 100% great so far. Man, I'm glad that your experience here has been great. So awesome. And then he wrote another one. Love Wesley Chapel. It's an awesome area. Hurricanes seem to not hit it so hard.
We get a lot of those.
Yeah, we're going to touch on. We're definitely going to touch on hurricanes here in a second. B wrote here, Waldorf Astoria residence. Has anyone heard of that? Coming to downtown St. Pete. Yeah, St. Pete's got a lot of condos. Tampa as well. In fact, I just wrote in my last video here. On our Instagram, which if you guys don't know about Instagram, tampa.florida.living, we've got Instagram going as well. But talking about new development and what is it? 400 Central over in St. Pete. That's about to go up. That's going to be the tallest residence condo, I believe, in the state of Florida. And then over in Tampa, we've got one going. It's just called One. But that one's going to be the tallest in the city in Tampa. So we got a lot of big condos and things going up. And then B, you also said we have studios in Channelside as small as 330. We do, man. We've got a lot of stuff in downtown Tampa and Channelside. What I'll tell you is that's like the place to be with condos. If you're looking for condos, I would absolutely focus on our downtown. And they're really starting to develop that walkability, which we don't really have anywhere else in the city. So, yeah. Awesome, man. Mike Bello.
Can't forget Bayshore. Got lots of great people living out there as well.
Yep, Bayshore too. My wife put me on your socials recently. Love your content. Your latest video featuring Casa Fresca was awesome. Morejon Lagoon looks like heaven on earth. Want to get out of Staten Island. Yeah, man. Mike, what's funny is, yes, thank you, by the way, for that Casa Fresca, that shout out. That was a good video. And they have a great product. Morejon Lagoon, here's what I'm going to say on it, because I never really fully sugarcoat things for people. It's 50-50, man. I think it's a great community, and those lagoon community concepts are amazing. I think they do a great job, but I will tell you from our experience, and Phil, you can attest to this, but it's probably 50-50, It's like some people get there and they're like, oh my God, this is paradise. It's like I'm always living in a resort where I can swim up bar, go to the tiki bar. There's always things going on. And then you'll have another 50%. They're like, I don't know. It kind of wore off, So just not sugarcoating it for you guys. It is an awesome concept, and I think it's awesome for some people. I think it could also somewhat wear off after a bit of time. So,
yeah.
Let's see here. Maurice just moved to Tampa from Ohio. Love it so far. You helped a lot with your videos. Thank you. Hey, thanks, Maurice. Appreciate it. Glad we're helpful. And I don't know if you bought, but if you didn't, call us if you're going to, because we want to help you, man. B, your mother-in-law lives in Wesley Chapel. Can't live there. Oh, yeah, man. Got to keep that distance sometimes. I get
it. That's healthy.
Yeah, sometimes you need a little bit of space. That's okay. So anyway, let's get back to something here. Guys, bring in some questions. Put them in the comments, and we are happy to answer them live here. But Phil, let's talk about them hurricanes for half a second.
Yes.
You've already, you've lived here a while now. So what have you experienced with hurricanes so far?
Okay. Very interesting. All right. So obviously coming from the north, right, you hear about the hurricanes. Honestly, we probably worry about them more up north than we probably worry about them living here, to be honest. My mom's always on the phone when she was living there, telling me exactly what to do. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, it's only a couple of days away. Like, I'm not really worried about it. But it's funny. So like one thing I learned, and it was a tough lesson, but I believe it was Hurricane Irma.
Yep.
Watch the Weather Channel, eye of the storm, day before the storm's coming, right over South Tampa, right over the house, right? We had friends come up from Miami there because it was originally going to hit Miami, right?
Yep.
And then it shifted to Tampa. So we're sitting there like, so they came from Miami, they're at my house, and we're looking, we're like, maybe we need to leave Tampa and head to the other coast. We pack up, we get all the troops rally together. The roads were kind of insane, at that point. I honestly thought it was more dangerous to be on the road than probably being in the storm. Head over to Melbourne, the guy, I was with a friend there. He's like, we're going to be safe. All the electric lines are under the ground. This is the best place to be. So, my friends moved 3 times. Now we're over on the other side. And where does the hurricane wind up? Right over Melbourne. So thing I always learned, right? There's always like a lot of, people are nervous, right? Everyone's going crazy. Everyone's going to the food store. There was no water in town at all.
Yeah.
Right. All the gas stations, they were just, filled, with cars. You couldn't even get gas. It was just, it felt like doomsday. But what I wound up learning out of the whole entire thing, weather always changes, right? You can never track a storm, completely accurately. And from now on, I'm always going to stay put.
There you go. And have toilet paper.
Toilet paper. Water and toilet paper. Always got to have it on hand here.
So, I know the funny thing is here, and not funny, but it's like hurricane preparedness, right? You always have a little bit of water, like a couple gallons of water. You got extra toilet paper, extra paper towels, and some batteries and flashlights, right? That's about it. Maybe a generator if you're pretty good off. But outside of that, you pack up and you go if it's a category 3 or higher. So, and I've lived here, born and raised here, 4 generations. None of my family's homes have ever been damaged, knock on wood. We haven't had a direct hit in over 100 years. And, part of it is just where we are on the Gulf Coast, right? Like most hurricanes come off of Africa or the Atlantic. And as they're coming over, a lot of times they hit either the east coast of Florida or they wrap around. And a lot of times when they wrap around, the way the winds come, right, is they kind of just like push them out towards Texas, Louisiana, or they hook them in early. So for whatever reason, you have to have like a perfect route to hit Tampa. And it has to be probably a category 2 or 3 or larger. You get a tropical storm in here, category 1, it's really not going to do too much. And any folks that are like Wesley Chapel or really away from the water, you're fine. Because, they always say run from water, hide from wind. You're okay kind of hunkering down at home if it's windy, right? So let me jump back into some of these comments here, though. Phil, maybe you can help me with this one. What areas are nice and close to downtown for single-family houses, preferably new construction? Love your videos. Hey, thank you for that. So new construction specifically, I'm going to say number 1, it's going to matter on budget. But whenever you say new construction, we're automatically thinking, hey, let's go out to the suburbs. Okay.
Right.
In the city limits, you're talking West Tampa, South Tampa, Riverside Heights, that's going to be the closest to downtown. You can find some one-off homes, but usually they're knocking down old homes and they're putting up these single custom homes. And 9 times out of 10, they're putting up big homes, so 700,000 to $1 million plus. If your budget's not there, I totally get it. Most aren't. You're looking at suburbs, right? So I would say Riverview is going to be the closest suburb. Riverview, Brandon.
Apollo Beach.
Well, that's where I was going to say is next. I was going to say now it depends. If you don't like Riverview, get it. You're going to have 2 ways to go. You can either go Apollo Beach, and Waterset is an awesome community, or you could probably look up towards Wesley Chapel because that drive is going to be about the same.
Right.
So hopefully that helps. Let's see. Hey, fella, what's the breakdown on property taxes and how much does it go up per year? Love Taylor Morrison and West Bay. Yeah, Taylor Morrison and West Bay are awesome builders, man. Like both of those. Breakdown on taxes. It's funny. You can call the appraiser's office and they will not be able to give you accurate taxes on a house that you don't currently own. And it's because it's always kind of moving. Here's what I'll tell you. It is based on a calculation involving millage rates, which is going to be different for each area, as well as the assessed value of your property. The quick version, I would say, is like 1.5% times the purchase price. So if you're buying a $5,000 or $500,000 house, $7,500 is probably a good number for your taxes.
And Adam, I think a good thing to add to that too is because, I've had a lot of this, misconception, confusion, over the years, I was looking at a house on MLS and they have the property taxes for 2023 on there. And they start making calculations on that predetermined amount. But it's really important to know when that purchase happens again. So if someone bought the house 5 years ago for $300,000 and now they're selling it for $450,000, it will be recalculated. So those numbers, cannot be used and assumed, that's what's going to be for your house and your purchase.
Yeah. Now, one thing that is, I think, an awesome bonus is we have homestead exemptions here. And what that does is if you homestead your property, you can get up to $50,000 in assess in a credit towards your taxes. Number one, that lowers it. And that's basically if it's a primary residence for you. But here's the beautiful thing is that it caps it. It can only increase it 3% per year after you've homesteaded your property. So, sometimes you'll see homes like what Phil's saying in the MLS that you've lived in it for 20 years. And it's like, man, their taxes are $1,500. And that house is probably a $700,000 house, right? And they're like, how is it so low? It's like, well, it's because it hasn't been reassessed yet because they haven't sold the property. So as soon as you sell a property or add on to the exterior, giving more square footage, then it'll be reassessed. But outside of that, I had a home at one point for I think 8-9 years, and it was and this was right after the crash in 2008. It was crazy at how low my taxes were, and everybody else's were double or more because my taxes just didn't go up until eventually I sold. So kind of a nice bonus here. Hey, this is going to kind of take me into my next one. I've seen Ed Mix. I'm sorry. Hey, bud, you're from Chicago. How you doing? Sold about 4 homes in Chicago last year for people that were moving here, Naperville and all the areas around it. But caught my eye because he's from Chicago. He or she is from Chicago. I've seen a few people from New York and different places, Staten Island and all that. And what's interesting is that the number one thing I would say is why people move here. We just got move here from California. How you doing, man? We'll get right back to you. The number one thing is lifestyle, right? We talk about cost of living, weather, all these things, but it's really lifestyle. And I think post-COVID, it kind of opened it up, right? People were saying, man, I've always thought about Florida, or I always thought about moving or things like that, but I always kind of had to hang on to my job. And number one, I think jobs basically, really opened the door to, hey, I can work remote. So now I can work from anywhere. But then it got people thinking, what's the lifestyle that I want? What do I want it to look like? What do I want my future to look like? And so that's where people start to say, man, the weather. Then it goes to the weather. Like, hey, I've always wanted somewhere warmer. I've always wanted a place that's more sunny, maybe something that has more things to do. And so the lifestyle is what I'm seeing people move here for more than anything. And it's funny because when we show houses, right? People are saying, hey, I want to look at this house. I want to look at that house. And I think both of us, we put emphasis on location more than anything, because here in Tampa, our houses are nice. It's not like, wow, we've got such a variety of architecture. I mean, they're all block homes. There's only so much you could shape a block, right? But I will say that location matters, because it's like, do you want to live near the beach? Do you travel often and need to be, to the airport or downtown? Like, what do you want that life to be? And that's the beautiful part about Tampa, is that we've got about 5 different lifestyles, from retirees to beach living, downtown. You don't need a car anymore if you live downtown, potentially. So things like that, man. And I mean, I feel like you see it with your people too, coming, that you're helping, the families you're helping, right?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, just to be able for their kids, be able to play sports all year round, and even a lot of family that I spoke to, they're like, oh, we just, our family has grown. We don't want to, be, jumping on planes all the time. But if I come down to Tampa, such a neutral part, of the state, I can go to Fort Lauderdale for a weekend. I can go up to Orlando for a weekend. Like, you could go up to down to Fort Myers. There's just so many like different road trips that you can do too. So that's been like, also, when I talk to a lot of the families, that's been like a big part of why they want to come here, And then again,
Yep.
if you like the water life, there's a lot of fishing out here. Our restaurants, again, right, with our city becoming more expensive, we also have a lot more assets now at reach to us that we'd never had before. I mean, when I first came down to Tampa, I didn't think the restaurant scene was that great. Now, I mean, great seafood, great Italian food. Pizza's getting a little better. It's a little bit, I can't give it to you yet, but it's getting a little better. There's just like, again, if you're coming from that north, right, and you're starting to get a little taste of home again. I actually had a great bagel 2 months ago. It blew my mind.
Yep.
But you know what?
There you go.
It was perfect.
Yep. What's that?
The bagel place?
Oh, yeah. What bagel place was it?
It was in Valrico. You have to ask my mom. I went over to the house. She had the bagel there. It was perfect. Starting to feel a little bit more like north again.
Little bit. All right. Well, not too much though. You don't want to take it all the way.
Culture's good.
B, thanks for letting me know that. Sounds like we just hit 20,000 subs on our channel. That's awesome. And a lot of it is for you folks watching, supporting us. So thank you guys. And we'll have to celebrate that one later. So we got Steph Vibe 9, I guess that is, from California. Your rock musicians, rock on, brother. Visual artists, and wonder what the possibilities are out there when it comes to playing concerts on the street. I'll be honest. I go out, often with my wife on weekends and things like that. I don't see too many people just ripping it up on the street. Every now and then you will, but for the most part, I feel like they're hired somehow by, different venues or stuff. What I will say is that we have a lot of live music. So what I would suggest to you, instead of just, jumping on the street and ripping it off, I would say, talk to some of the venues, see if they need anybody playing, because I knew a bunch of people, or I have friends over the past that they're musicians, and man, they get gigs all the time, because again, it's very lively here. B added this in the comments. St. Pete is where you want to be for musicians and artists. Big artist community. I mean, he's not wrong. There's a ton of music everywhere, especially up and down the Riverwalk now. So again, I'm 99% sure you just can't just open it up and start playing like, some of these bigger cities where you got people drumming on buckets and stuff. I don't think you really have that stuff, but definitely live music everywhere. This is one that catches me off guard, but I'm going to give it to you too. John, thanks for shooting us a comment. It says, who would live in Tampa? Seriously, I lived there 2.5 years ago. Worst place ever. Nobody speaks to anybody. Everyone talks behind each other's backs. Police racially profile Black people. Man, I don't know about that last part. You'll probably get something everywhere if you look for it. What I will say is the front end, though, nobody speaks to anybody. That's a hard one to swallow, man. I think we're super friendly here, and by no means is Tampa or even Florida the South, right? It's not. We can't claim Southern hospitality, but I always say that the salt, the sand, and the sun, man, it it cools us down and it slows us down the pace. And I only say that because I had a bunch of old roommates back in college from Jersey. And it's funny because when he moved down here, he was kind of rough around the edges, like, I'm moving fast pace, you know, kind of upstate kind of or up north type of mentality, like just rat race. Everything's going fast. And he's like, why do you wave to everybody? And I said, I don't know. It's just how we do it here. And sure enough, a few years later, I catch up with him and he's over here opening doors for random people that he doesn't know. He's waving to people. Hey, how's it going? Honking at people. I would say it's really hard if you're saying that nobody speaks to anybody because I just don't see that. I see everybody very welcoming.
I was used to that up north. You know, when I first came down here, it was kind of like, you know, head down, hand in the sand, like, you know, super, super fast paced. But that was like one of the first things I noticed here too. Like everybody was so friendly, even gas station. It don't matter where you were. Like you said, open doors. I actually think it's one of the most friendly places, you know, to be honest with you. And it's really, like I said, it's really with all the networking things we have down, it's really easy to make friends. They have a lot of cool social events. I definitely have to disagree with that part.
Yeah. He wrote back a second one, followed up with that. All good, man. You just say hi to your neighbors. Nobody ever spoke back. Man, I just think you had weird neighbors, man. If you were my neighbor, I'd say hi.
Me too. Me too.
I hang out with all my neighbors. We eat and drink and party on weekends with the kids and everybody. I just think maybe it was just bad neighbors, man. Let's see here. Love your videos, Dana. Awesome. Thank you so much. Moving in 2026. I love it. Reach out to our team because Phil right here can help you out. He can help you find a home.
Looking forward to it, Dana.
Yeah, we got a lot of things. Got a lot of people on here. It's awesome, man. Oh, here you go. That was Sinatra. Came here 3 years ago. It's been a blessing. Got stopped all the time in New York. Here almost 3 years, and it's been peaceful. People always stop to talk to us. Awesome. I love to hear the positive. And sorry, John, you had a bad experience with a bad neighbor. Either way, guys, throw a couple topics out. We got a little bit longer here on this live stream. Try not to take it to an hour, but throw us a little bit more if you have any questions or topics. We'd love to talk about it, chat about it, or answer your questions. Let's talk about community too, because John just touched on something saying he had a bad neighbor. The one thing I'll say here is goes back to lifestyle a little bit, is like get out and talk to people, you know. And I know not everybody's an extrovert, and that's okay. But like when my kids go to school, I'm friends with their parents. And when my kids go to soccer, I try to go to all the birthday parties my daughter's included with, because we want to build that community. And I think there's something special if you can. They don't have to be your best friend, but it's something special if you can start to build little communities within your city of people to hang out with and those groups and those connections. Because, man, there's nothing better than going to those old time cafes. I've showed it in a couple of my videos, and it's honestly a real thing here. To go to those old timer cafes while the old timers in Tampa have been going there every day, same time. You can see them in there having coffee and shooting the shit. And it's just fun to see that and to see that tradition in a way. And I feel like that's something special that Tampa has and really holds on to. It's like no matter how much of a cosmopolitan city that we're turning into, it's like we still hold on to that small community, small town vibe in a way. You just got to look for it sometimes. You know, it's not always going to be right there in big, briny, bright, shiny lights. So, Phil, I'll let you take this one, man. Do you recommend renting for the first 6 months to 1 year before buying a home when moving to Tampa? This way you can learn about the area and decide on a location. It's a good question.
That's a really good question. Honestly, I think there's two answers to that. We specialize a lot in relocation, right, Adam? I would probably say, a majority of our business is taking people in from other states and bringing them in here. I always recommend ultimately, right? Adam does a great job with the videos explaining everything, but you really have to come here and spend a few days and really see, if you really like Tampa. I always think coming here, getting into the city, spending a day there, talking with us, with me, going over some areas that are going to support your lifestyle. And you can do that all within 2 or 3 days. So after you do that trip, and we really narrow in and vet out your situation, I think that's a conversation we have after the trip. Like, hey, because a lot of times, I hit the nail right on the head. Like, I want to be, in a community where I can, my kids can go outside, they can play, in the front yard, they can meet tons of friends. And I bring them over to Wesley Chapel in one of those communities that has all that. Then they go to the city, they see all the different type of food, the experiences. And you're like, you know what? I like it. I'm confident that this is a place where I want to be. So then, then it's at that point, I think it's a good bet to buy. But if not, if you're kind of, torn, you like Tampa, but you can't decide, you want suburbs, you want to live with the city. I don't think renting short term is also a bad option, because then that gives you a little bit longer of a time to look into exactly where you want to be. Because as we always talk about it, there's a lot of different lifestyles that you can live in Tampa. And if you don't find it that way, you can take your time.
I'd say, Phil, man, I know, and I think you can agree with me on this one. Sometimes we like it when somebody is calling us 6 months out from buying versus like, hey, I'm in town next weekend. And listen, we love somebody that comes in a week and finds a house and they're happy.
Right.
But it allows us to really do our job and to work with you over a 6-month period or 3-month period or whatever that looks like, doing our homework, because over the phone, I know you'll jump on a phone call or a Zoom call or whatever that needs to be
all the time
with somebody saying, hey, what's your lifestyle like? Are schools important? Where are you going to work? I mean, really just unfolding and dissecting everything so that now we can put it all back together saying, okay, based on what you told us, these are 2 or 3 areas to focus on. Now let's put all of our energy in that so that we can try to get it right. Then when you come in town, let's make sure that it matches what is on paper. And then if you like it, let's pull the trigger on something because we're ready to buy something. However, like you just said a minute ago, if you did all that and it still isn't right, then go rent and figure it out. And we'll still work with you while you're renting to maybe find it and line it up within that first year. So it's a great question. And a lot of people ask that actually. And they think as realtors, we're always going to tell them, no, you got to buy.
I honestly, just to add to that, I also think it's really your situation. You coming down with kids, you have a job, right? Like, the problem, one issue, right? If you're coming down and you have kids, you got to think school system. So it's like we have to do all that homework ahead of time to really get all that information, really trying to find you a place. Because the last thing you would want to do here is move your whole family here. Your kids go to school in that rental property district. And then all of a sudden, oh, hey, I want to move to a different town. Then you got to take your kids out of school again. So, if you had a job, you might know exactly how long you want to commute to it. So it really is case to case basis, I think.
Yep. B's just going to move in with me for 6 months. I don't know, man. If you do, you got the kids and I'm going out on date night with my wife. So I don't know if you want that. All right. So El Fresh came back, said, what place around St. Pete doesn't get so hard with bad weather? Love the atmosphere in St. Pete. Feels like an island. Bad weather, and I'm assuming you're talking about just like heavy rainstorms. That's going to be the same no matter where you're at. And I don't necessarily call it bad weather. I actually love it. I take naps during bad weather. But if you're meaning like flooding in the streets and things like that come from those bad weather, there are some areas, we had somebody else actually answer it for me, but there's areas, actually those are good areas. Sorry. Kenwood, Woodlawn, et cetera. He was saying just stay away from like Shore Acres, Snell Island. Snell Isle and Shore Acres right there, Venetian Isle. They do have a little bit of flooding, like street flooding. I personally like those areas, but it does have a little street flooding. South of that, historic Northeast is phenomenal. And it gives you access right there to downtown and Vinoy Park, and you can ride all along that waterfront there. And I think it's just gorgeous in there. It's going to have to be one of those where you just kind of go through it, man. I mean, even High Park, some of the best areas in Tampa, Bayshore, flood. But, they flood for an afternoon and then the waters recede. And it's just because of old sewage that these cities are doing their best to kind of update the sewage. I know Tampa's about to go through a big overhaul of the pipeline. When I interviewed the mayor, she was talking about it. So, it's getting addressed, but, outside of that.
Well, and Adam, I think for the viewers out there too, a really good thing, guys, when you're looking for, again, if you're worried about flooding, right? It all comes down to elevation at the end of the day. You got 3 different tiers, okay, for your flooding. VE, velocity, okay, it's going to be your highest, okay, as far as flooding, all right, that's going to be your flood zone. So you can kind of judge it off the zones. AE is going to be your second level, your second tier. You do have to carry flood insurance there. And then also your other one's going to be X and X500. Those are no flood zones. So I always like when I get that question, I try to make sure I educate my clients on what the zones mean. So VE is going to be the highest risk. AE is going to be your mid, and X or X500, you're in a no flood zone.
There you go. Is it a buyer's market? That's a good question. I think it was last week. Yeah, last week live stream, I did it with Brian Marks, one of our preferred lenders here, and we really dove into this. No, it's not a buyer's market. Quick answer. What it is we are seeing an influx of inventory on the market, but demand is still there. Okay. What defines a buyer's market is 6 to 7 months is actually a balanced market. 6 months is a balanced market. Anything above that, 7, 8, 9 months of inventory, and now it becomes a buyer's market because those homes are not getting absorbed fast enough, meaning they're sitting on the market. And it allows buyers to basically negotiate. It's like, oh, you want to sell your home in 30 days? You got to move. Well, I'm going to throw you an offer and we're going to negotiate. So right now we are, I believe it was just under 4 months of inventory, which I'll be honest with you is healthy. I want to see 4 or 5 months of inventory. I don't want to see 1 to 2 months, which is where we've been living for the last 3 years. When that happens, if demand is still there, prices are going to go up. At 4 or 5, we are starting to see this nice plateau. And remember, guys, real estate should be going up 1 to 3, 1 to 4% max a year, not these double-digit numbers that we're seeing. So I am really happy where things are at right now in Tampa as far as real estate. I do not see the market going 20% backwards. If it went 5% backwards, wouldn't shock me, but it also wouldn't change much here in Tampa. If it went up 5%, same thing. I don't think it's going to shock me or change much. Anything a 10% swing either way, I think it would somewhat shock me because I do think we're in this really nice period right now with good inventory, healthy prices. I know it feels expensive to a lot of people, but that's just nationwide. And I do think we're just in a really good spot. So, yeah. Nefercat, is there a condo crisis in Tampa? I keep reading about problems with condos and huge assessments. Phil, you want that one or you want me to get it?
Yeah, I can actually I'm going through one right now myself, actually. So
there you go.
That's a tough question. That's obviously going to be building to building. I do believe here especially in my area, guys, I'm in South Tampa, Ballast Point, right around Hyde Park area, not too far. A lot of these communities were a part of that initial boom in Tampa in the 2002, 2003, 2004. These buildings now are starting to become 20 and 25 years old. So if the HOA has not maintained the properties properly along the way, we're starting to hit that time now where a lot of these communities around me need new roofs, need new stucco. It's starting to hit that time where money needs to start to be put in. So I really think that's something that's not, you can look at as a whole. You have to take it property to property. And that's why you should call us because we will be digging into those things for you. That's why, you rely heavily on your inspectors. Okay. When you're looking into these condos, HOA, how much reserves do they have? These are all questions that you have to dive deeper into that. So again, that's more of a case by case, building by building situation. I can't.
A lot of those the newer headaches that we're seeing with condos are more on like the old buildings. The newer buildings don't really have that too much. The older buildings, it's anything over 3 stories, and so whenever you do have that, then you just need to, like Phil said, just have us check into the information. Like, hey, have you guys already addressed the engineering reports? Have you already addressed other things so that we know that the assessment's already been handled, or is there something big on the horizon? So. Is it a crisis? It's a tough word. I think it's something that is of concern for sure, but not with every building.
Right. I would say it's normal, normal for aging assets for sure.
Yep. going to cap it off with a funny one, man. Made me laugh. Spring Hill just opened a new Applebee's. Too much excitement. Hey, listen, don't rip on Applebee's too much because they supported one of my other businesses in Plant City. I'm actually, I had a mud run company like Tough Mudder a few years back. And in Plant City on Applebee's, somebody sent me a picture of this last week. I'm still on the wall. A bunch of us just, posing. It's kind of funny. Guys, I want to wrap this up. I appreciate the interaction. I appreciate the support. We're going to go celebrate 20,000 followers now. And, throw us some information. Shoot us messages, whether that be you're looking for a home or you just want us to shoot more video on new content. We'd love to be there for you. We'd love to help. Phil and I are always here to help you as well as the rest of my team. And until that next video, guys, we're going to catch you later. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.